Shabbat Shalom. When Jewish immigrants came to North America, a lot of them were workers and on Friday had to work late. Some of them were shopkeepers and, as you know, in Toronto, until very recently, the weekend was just Sunday and everything was closed on Sunday, so the shopkeepers had to keep their store open on Saturday. So how did the Reform movement respond to this? Well, the main innovation was, and Isaac Mayer Wise, the leader of the Reform movement and the founder, really, of the Reform movement in North America, writes about this, to have a late service on Friday night. Started at 8 o'clock, that way people, if they have to work, can come to services, and let's make Friday night service a really big deal, because we know, even though we wish it weren't the case, we know that a lot of people work on Saturday. And throughout the Reform movement, North America, Friday night, the Friday night service became the main service. Now in 1965, Rabbi Plaut gave a famous speech to the Reform rabbis, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, their convention. It was, well, I think it was famous. We studied it in rabbinical school. I don't know how famous it was for other Jews. Famous for rabbis in Cincinnati, I guess. But he gave the speech saying, our late Friday night service has ruined home Shabbat observance on Friday night. We should pick up Saturday morning, make that the main service so people actually celebrate Shabbat at home. Now I'll ask Michael Cole, I think we've talked about this before, when did Holy Blossom actually get rid of their late Friday night service? Shortly after Rabbi Marmer came. So Plaut gave this speech in 1965, and it took until he retired to actually get rid of the late Friday night service here. And more, I would guess, many of our people don't come to, that's why I'm guessing people don't come to services here Friday night, is because they're observing Shabbat at home. But here we are, Holy Blossom, maybe, I would guess, I've been to a lot of Reform synagogues around North America. Holy Blossom is, I think, one of the only ones that the main service is Saturday morning. Not that we don't want the Friday night service to also be a main service, but I think Saturday morning has become a thing here. So Holy Blossomites take Shabbat seriously. So I want to take Shabbat seriously and discuss Shabbat. Let's turn in our Torah commentary. Right at this week's Torah portion, we just read the last verses of the second Torah portion. Let's turn to the first verses of the first Torah portion of this week, which are on page 612. So, last week and the week before, Tetzaveh and Ki Tisa, the Torah portions are all about the plans for the building of the sanctuary that the Israelites would carry with them in the wilderness, called the Mishkan, sometimes called Ohel Moed. All about the plans that God gives to Moses. This week's double portion is all about the building of those plans. It basically repeats it again and says the people did it, and it talks about the accounting to make sure all the money and the books were straight. And then at the end, God comes and dwells. God's presence comes to that place they build. But we have here these few verses that are kind of, seem to be out of, don't make sense here, seem to be bringing up a different topic right at the beginning of the Torah portion. Moses then convoked the whole Israelite community and said to them, so here we are, we have the plans, he's getting everybody together to talk to them right before they start building. These are the things that the Eternal has commanded you to do. On 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day you shall have a Sabbath of complete rest. You shall have Shabbat, holy to the Eternal. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. You shall kindle no fire throughout your settlements on Shabbat. So first I'll ask a little question. Why do you think these few verses go between the plans for building the sanctuary and the building of the sanctuary? What do they have to do with each other?
Because the people would be so eager to build it that they might want to work 7 days a week.
The people will be so eager to build it that they might want to work 7 days a week. That's beautiful. And in fact, the people were so eager, it talks about it in this Torah portion, so eager to donate their stuff for the building that they had to say, stop, that's too much. Right? So the people were so eager to build that they had to be reminded to stop. Or you would build yourself to death, if you will. Good. Any other ideas? What is the building of the Mishkan? Why does it have to be, why do we have to interrupt it with verses about Shabbat? Cynthia. To remember and acknowledge God during the building. So maybe the building, you're thinking, we're so powerful, we could build this beautiful building, but then you need to take a stop and remember that what are we building it for? Worship of God, experiencing God's presence, and that we were commanded by God to build it. So maybe Shabbat is that pause to remember all of that. That our building, our technology, our technology for building, our power that we feel that we could build tall build. It wasn't tall, but the temple later was probably the tallest building they've ever seen in their lives. But tall buildings that maybe they would want to stamp their name on. That was a political comment. Sorry. We have to remember that we're not ultimately in control. Good. Yeah, Jeff. As holy as this sanctuary is that we're building, Shabbat maybe is more holy. Right? That ultimately these things on the ground, things in space, these material things are not as important as transcending the material on Shabbat. Okay, one more, Dina.
If we want God to stand behind us, we stand behind God by building the tabernacles, etc., and obeying His rules by observing.
So maybe, Dina says, if we want God to be with us, that we have to observe the mitzvot, and maybe it's just about obedience, if I'm reading you correctly, then maybe it's just about obedience that God gives a command, we obey it. That's definitely a stream within Jewish thought. No, I'm reading you wrong. So, good. So Shabbat is about honor and respect of God. Good. Good. So I want to add another reading that we're going to do some comparing of biblical verses. So when I was a little kid, the rabbi in my synagogue in St. Louis, Jerome Grolman, was also my dad's childhood rabbi. He retired shortly after I was a little kid. But he would always say, take your united Hebrew finger and put it here on the page so that you could keep your place. So take your holy blossom finger, put it here, and turn to page 22. So toward the top of the page, Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. Completed now were heaven and earth and all their host. On the seventh day, God had completed the work that had been done, ceasing then on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. Then God blessed. Oh, I'm going to stop there for a second. Okay? So remember, completed now were heaven and earth. What is this talking about? God finished the 6 days of creation, then the seventh day rested. Now I have to pay attention. The first word in Hebrew is a word that means completed, but there's other words that mean completed. Vayachulu hashamayim, God completed the heaven. the heavens, the haaretz, the kol sava'am, the heaven and the earth, and all of the other stuff. So that word for completed, you have to remember. Now, you had your finger still in there. Turn to page 631. You have your finger there because it's going to help you turn easier. And it says right by the space there, thus was completed all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. The Israelites did so, just as the Eternal had commanded Moses, so they did. By techal, it's the same root for the word completed. Now, if you're into biblical criticism, some people say both of these sections were written by the priestly writer. So what are they connecting? The completion of what? Creation to the completion of what? The tabernacle. What does God do after the completion of creation? Rest. So I'm flipping back. You don't have to, you can just listen to me. On the seventh day, God had completed the work that had been done, ceasing then on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And this word done, asa is the root, same root that's used here, what the people had done. Okay? Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, and ceased from all the creative work that God had chosen to do. Blessed. You turn some verses forward to verse 43 on the next page. And when Moses saw that they had performed all the tasks as the Eternal had commanded, so they had done. Again, this word. Moses, what did Moses do? Bless them. The work, the creation, finishing the work that they did and blessing. And then where does it come together? In what day? Shabbat. This is from Yeshayahu Leibovich, Israeli thinker. Shabbat is the supreme symbol of the world, with everything in it is Shabbat is a supreme symbol that the world, with everything in it, is God's. For in 6 days God made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh. That's from the Ten Commandments. Therefore, you who are engaged here in the work related to the sanctuary, do not forget what the significance is of this work. The work related to the sanctuary is carried out entirely by people. There is no divine intervention, nor are there any miraculous acts. The materials used in the sanctuary are brought by human beings. The work is carried out by human beings. The chief artisans are mentioned by name, and the words "you will make" and "he made" are repeated innumerable times. Do not forget before whom all these things are being made. They are being made before the one who spoke and created the world. It is in this context that Shabbat and the rigor of the laws regarding Shabbat are mentioned, because Shabbat is a reminder of the act of creation, a sign of the creation of the world by God. So building and resting, just like God did. But with the Mishkan, the people were bringing God's, if you read the opening chapters as the perfect creation, down as kind of a symbol of the perfect creation. I'm going to go on with Leibovitz. It's also possible to find a hint on another topic in the two Sidrot, which repeat the work on the sanctuary, a hint that here the service of God by people in the world is contrasted with the creation of the world by God. Thus, we see that the end of creation is marked by one of the most commonly quoted verses, "The heaven and the earth were completed, and all within them." And the completion of the sanctuary uses the exact same formula. We read that. Thus was all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of assembly finished. It is difficult to assume that this is not deliberate. The heavens and the earth were finished, parallels. Thus was all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of assembly completed. But not only that, Once the heaven and all the earth and all within them were completed, we are told, God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. And after the sanctuary was completed, we are told, and Moses blessed them. And here, them refers to those involved in the work of the sanctuary. Heaven and earth were completed parallels the work of the sanctuary was completed. And God blessed the seventh day parallels Moses blessed them. The intended conformity between the two is obvious. So, another question about our Shabbat verses. What is it about fire that is specifically forbidden here? What does fire symbolize? Well, actually, in the Mishkan, in the temple, the fire kept burning and they kept sacrificing during Shabbat. It was the people who were forbidden to light a fire. So maybe they're saying, well, don't think that you can do your sacrifices at home on Shabbat. It has to be in the temple. That could be it. But what else does fire symbolize? Work. Okay, so you could think that, it takes effort to light the fire. Cooking, yes. But think about when you go to the Ram and you see, about the cavemen and what created civilization? Tools and fire, though. When they first had fire, so fire symbolizes technology. Right? So especially they're saying, you are builders, but you need to stop. That I want to think about it as, during the week, we build things, we create things like God does. We try to make the world better, we try to bring justice. We do that. God is not intervening, as I said, God didn't build the Mishkan, the people did that. But what happens on Shabbat? You stop. There's only so much we can do in the world. We can work all week long, but we can never finish, we can never create, we can never complete, we can never perfect. So on Shabbat, you need to step back and say, you know what? I've done all I can. So maybe that's what it means with the fire, that the fire is symbolizing all of our human progress, our human innovation, our human intuition, all of that. And on Shabbat, you need to step back. So we think today there's so much we should be doing to make the world a better place, to make it more accepting and bring healing to people. But then, when we do that, we can get so discouraged because we can never complete that. We're never actually going to be successful. Shabbat helps us realize that it's enough. And then the next day you try it again. Shabbat Shalom.